Hello, everybody. Greetings from Norway and from Bulgaria. I want to speak to you about traveling. Traveling is something that you do, all of you do, that I do, and that we have done for a long time and will continue to do. It's part of our life. It's also part of globalization. I want to share with you some stories of my own travels. First, brief ones from Bangladesh, where I used to live several years. There was a meeting. I was going to be introduced to the leader of the project that I was involved with. He was a senior guy, and I was just starting to learn Bangla. And I knew how I should titulate him. Kaka is a honorific term for anybody that is older than you. It's also a term for uncle, but it's used much more generic. So I tried in my fumbling Bangla to do that, and I did a little mistake. Instead of saying Kaka, I said cuckoo. The whole audience got completely blank and very uneasy, and they looked at this guy and was wondering, what is he going to say now? Because they all knew what I had said. You don't know. I had actually titulated him as Mr. Dog. I called him a dog. Kaka is uncle and cuckoo is dog. So there was this long silence, and then suddenly, he smiled from ear to ear, and everything was okay. When you're a foreigner, you can do mistakes. It's acceptable. Everybody does it. Another one, little later with my friends, fishermen. I was doing anthropological fieldwork among fishermen. They asked me on a Friday, "Do you want to come to the mosque with us?" So I said, "Sure, I want to go to the mosque with you." And we came there, and they were very happy because I actually wanted to come along with them. They knew I was not a Muslim. We came to the mosque, they went in, and as I should pass through the door, suddenly the imam stood there, like this. Big fella. Didn't say a word. He just pointed, get out of here. No heathens in my mosque. I learned something from that too, namely that there are limits to how much you actually can accomplish, how much you can connect, how much you can achieve by exploring. There are two categories of people traveling. You probably belong in one of them. Tourism. You travel to exotic destinations. Maybe you are, if I look at your age group, maybe you don't really fall into this, but let me caricature it. The average tourist that travels goes to the beach, sits in the bar, hangs around the pool, parties, sleep a lot, eat a lot, and when they eat, they usually eat Western food. In other words, there is very little understanding of interaction with and relationship with the local culture. The other big category are businessmen who travel to have meetings, likely with people who themselves speak English and are educated in a Western country. Very little interaction, very little understanding of the local culture. This is not good. it means that we lose a lot out of actually understanding what's happening, what is going on in the other culture. This first slide here is a caricature again of me versus them. If from on your left side it's us, and on the right side it's everybody else. We are the good guys, they are the bad guys. There's a lot of that in the world today. Not just on the macro level, countries, but even specifically between ethnic groups and between individuals. I think that traveling could be an avenue to actually come across that, to learn how to connect much better. This is a little presentation of what happens when anthropologists come visiting. We always want to find the unspoiled tribe where nobody has been before. I mean, I was the first one there. And this makes fun of that by explaining how the indigenous peoples throw away their stereos, their TV, whatnot, because they don't want to spoil the fun for the anthropologists. I never had that kind of luck, but the place where I did the fieldwork in northeast Bangladesh, people had never seen a white man before. I was the first. When I lived there, I had serious problems explaining what I did. I asked stupid questions from their point of view. How old are you? How many children do you have? Where did you live before? How do you make a living? Questions that nobody had ever asked them before. And somehow, I was kind of certified as a crazy guy, so they accepted that too. And eventually I got tired of that, so I decided to adopt a different approach. There are two positions that foreigners have. One is medical doctor, and one is teacher. Not just in Bangladesh, but in any third world country, you'll find these two positions. So I used to say to people, I'm a teacher. I'm a doctor, or actually, daktar, as they pronounce it. That went well until at one point it came back to haunt me, because one day somebody came running to my house and said, Daktar, come. There was a guy who was sick, and they expected me to be able to treat him just like that. It was in a way very easy, because all they wanted was that I, twice a week, would come and give him a shot with a syringe, something that we bought in the local pharmacy, and I'm not good with blood, so I didn't close my eyes and went like that twice a week. And he was happy, and he progressed and felt good, and everybody in the village was very happy until he got sicker and eventually passed away. And then I was uncertain what's happening now. Will they blame me? But I decided that he died in spite of what I did, not because of it. So another example of what it means like to travel and get close to people. A very special story that none of you would ever experience. This was in Ghana. It was a World Bank mission. I used to work for the World Bank. And I was responsible for social issues in this project. There's something called chieftaincy in Ghana. Chieftaincy system. There are chiefs on many levels, from the smallest village up to kings. And I had a meeting with the next top boss, chief, actually a king. He was the Minister of Chieftaincy Affairs. We had long meetings. He was Western, put his feet up on the table, offered me beer from his fridge, and we were on first name. And then one day he asked, "Do you want to come with me home?" Sure, I said. I want to see his palace. So we drove there, and I was ushered into this huge building, and I didn't see him again. And after a while, some guy came and somehow just pushed me through a door. And then on the back side of the palace, there was this enormous area, so 3 by 300 meters, packed with several thousand people. And at the far end, on the throne, this guy was sitting, all dressed in his traditional garb. And to make a long story short, he had tricked me. He had really turned the tables around. He had brought me there as a representative of the World Bank in order to be able to tell his citizens, pointing at me, there is the World Bank. They had made this terrible project, and I don't like it. And everybody felt very happy because the king had managed to, get the World Bank to come to his little palace and take this this criticism. Afterwards, he came in and said, slapped me on the shoulder and said, "So how did you like that, Lars?" And grinned, and we were good friends afterwards. But when we stood there, I was pretty mad. Who wants to change? This little criticism I've given at ways of traveling, I know people, many people agree with me, but who actually wants to do that, that's a different story. And what needs to be done is that it's actually necessary to leave the beach, leave the pool, leave the bar, and actually go out among people and talk to them, interact with them, learn from them, take a chance, and see what happens. I mean, if I hadn't started studying anthropology, I would never have had these, in many cases, wondrous stories. In my village in Bangladesh, I rented a house, and I was told that, we have to, what's the term? We have to get a priest to come and kind of do a service, so that it's religious service, so that it's, well dedicated to the gods and all that. And there were some foods which we made, and the priest came, and all he did was go over there and sit in the corner and blow himself absolutely stoned on ganja, or hashish, if you like. So he was, the way he was dedicating the house was to sit there and get himself completely wasted on smoking hashish. And I'm sure none of you have experienced that before. I hadn't, and I haven't experienced it since, but it's interesting, some of the interesting parts of being an anthropologist. The interesting thing here is that when you go out on a tangent, when you make yourself vulnerable, when you go up the back alleys, instead of sitting at the bar, you meet some people and you start talking to them, then if this happens long enough, there is the interesting experience that you will have, that I had, I'm sure you will have it too, that in a way, as you get into that culture, at the same time, you gradually step out of your own culture. You begin to see yourself from the outside. You begin to see, as I did, how your own culture is not just the one culture on the planet that is good. It's just of one of many thousand. And that is a profound lesson. That is the best lesson that I've had working with anthropology, which I have done now for more than 30 years, living and working in, I don't know, more than 60 countries. This fact of actually seeing that my Norwegian culture is not the one solution that can, if you like, save the planet. It's just one way of living. There are so many other ones. You represent one of them. I would like to say a word about your own country. See, as a Norwegian, if I want to find something exotic, I have to go far away. You don't have to do that. You have the exotic, the different, the other among you. I work with ethnic minorities and indigenous peoples a lot, and I work a lot with Roma in Bulgaria right now, and you have Roma here. I am really saddened by seeing this total gulf, abyss that exists in this country and in neighboring countries between majority population and Roma. I think that your region needs to heal that wound in order to progress. There are such a number of complications that brings with it that needs to be addressed. So this is a heartfelt plea from my side. A final story about Roma. This was in Belgrade, another World Bank project. My friend said it's what's it called? The day when you go to the cemetery. We had it just last week. It's All Saints Day. We went 10, 15 people, and they all were carrying baskets. And I didn't understand why. We sat down, and they proceeded to use the grave as a table and put on tablecloth, glasses, cutlery, bread, fish, meat, and we were actually using a grave as a table. If I had tried that in Norway, I would, within that, have been whisked away. It's a completely different way of thinking. So my plea to you is, go beyond when you travel. Go beyond the normal route and find things and people that can tell you wonderful things about themselves and about you, because they are outsiders to you. They see your culture from the outside. And in that interaction, wonderful things can happen. Thank you very much.